Among the many great things about the Siege of Mandalore, the final arc of Star Wars The Clone Wars, was the performance of Maul. He was the driving force behind much of the arc's plot. After all, the Siege of Mandalore itself occurred because the Jedi wanted to capture him. But as we learned over the course of the arc, Maul wanted that. He had wanted the Jedi to come to Mandalore to fight him, as he had had a vision of Anakin's future as Darth Vader. But he was unable to lure the Republic to Mandalore. Skywalker didn't come. Ahsoka Tano showed up instead. This screwed the whole plan, causing him to low-key panic. But what if Ahsoka wasn't the one who was sent to Mandalore? What if things went as Maul had planned? In this video, we'll be exploring a few of these possibilities and discussing why they would have changed everything.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
As we discussed in an earlier video, the Sith had spent decades clouding the vision of the Jedi, preventing them from foreseeing details of the Sith grand plan. But the shroud of the dark side that Sidious cast over the eyes of the Jedi Council wasn't nearly as impenetrable for Darksiders as you would probably expect. Thus, Maul, Sidious's former Sith assassin, was able to catch a glimpse of the future in a dream a few weeks before Sidious's triumph. The details were unclear, but Maul awoke knowing two things: that his former master was on the verge of victory, and that his victory would come via Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side. Both prospects scared him Sithless. Maul was terrified of his old master and also of the idea that he was about to achieve nigh insurmountable power over the whole galaxy. And while he didn't care about saving the Jedi, the Republic, or anything like that, he desperately wanted to diminish Sidious's power in whatever way he could. He correctly perceived that Anakin Skywalker was the shatterpoint in Sidious's schemes, and he understood that if Anakin were to fall, he would be unstoppable. Hastily, he cobbled together a plan to strike at that shatterpoint, hopefully weakening Sidious greatly in the process. He prepared to lure Anakin Skywalker to Mandalore, where he hoped he would be able to kill him. The first stage of this plan worked. He allowed himself to briefly be seen in public on Sundari, and Bo-Katan Kryze quickly caught wind of it. She and her Mandalorian loyalists were at a severe disadvantage against Maul in the ongoing civil war on Sundari, and Bo-Katan was well aware that she wouldn't be able to win without aid. Maul believed she would turn first to the Republic. More specifically, he believed she would turn to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had been involved in the start of the Civil War. By showing himself in public, he further believed that his presence would convince the Jedi to support the Mandalorian loyalists. He was right on both counts, as we know well. Through Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan contacted Kenobi and Skywalker to ask for help, and the two Jedi agreed to send aid. The next stage of Maul's plan was the Republic invasion of Mandalore. By that point in the Clone Wars, it was well known that Kenobi and Skywalker were virtually inseparable, despite no longer being master and apprentice, and Maul knew that if Kenobi came to Mandalore to help Bo-Katan, Skywalker would come with him. This was nearly the case, and this stage of Maul's plan would have worked were it not for General Grievous. While all this was playing out, General Grievous launched a surprise attack on Coruscant, kickstarting the largest battle of the Clone Wars. The Battle of Coruscant lasted for about a full week, but for the first few days of fighting, nobody outside of the Coruscant system even knew it was happening, as Grievous had brought a powerful signal jammer with him, stifling all communications to and from the planet. Only when he kidnapped Supreme Chancellor Palpatine did the news of the battle escape to the outside of the galaxy. Even then, many Republic forces only learned about it through Grievous's personal announcement of the Chancellor's capture, which he broadcast to the entire galaxy. This announcement happened just as the 501st Legion was preparing to leave for Mandalore. Kenobi and Skywalker were immediately recalled to Coruscant to rescue the captive Chancellor, abandoning their plan to capture Maul. They left the force they had been assembling under the joint command of Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex on Mandalore, however, thus allowing the siege of Mandalore to proceed. But it didn't matter for Maul. His plans had already been foiled. But what if Kenobi and Skywalker weren't summoned back to Coruscant? Well, firstly, Maul's plan still wouldn't have gone off as expected. He was nothing short of insane to believe he could slay the Chosen One. Really, it would have taken a miracle for him to even scratch Skywalker. Maul, after all, wasn't really all that powerful as far as major force-wielding characters go. Don't get us wrong, he was highly skilled with a lightsaber, but Kenobi and Skywalker were even better duelists, and as he had been trained only as an assassin, they were much more powerful and strategically capable too. Maul would have either been captured or killed, and likely without too much hassle on the part of the Jedi. But this doesn't mean that Maul's plan would have failed, as he didn't need to survive for it to succeed. All he needed to do was to get Skywalker away from Sidious at that incredibly crucial moment, even if only for a few days. A lot of people don't realize it, but Sidious's ultimate victory was actually a very tenuous thing. It came very close to failing for two big reasons. It relied heavily upon Skywalker, and the Jedi Council was very close to catching Sidious. For the sake of speculation, let's say that, in this scenario, two other Jedi boarded the Invisible Hand, killed Dooku, and rescued Palpatine, ending the Battle of Coruscant more or less the same way. A few days later, General Grievous would have been located on Utapau, and an invasion force would have been sent to kill him. Considering that, according to the Journal of the 501st, the force sent to take Utapau was sufficient to capture 3 whole star systems, it's a fair bet that Grievous would have been destroyed. He would surely have killed whatever Jedi were sent to take him out, but if he tried to escape Utapau, he likely would have been shot down by the Republic fleet. Even then, that's assuming that the captain of said fleet didn't decide to just bombard Pao City when the news of the Jedi's failure came through, which would have been a strong possibility. If this were to happen, the Jedi Council would have confronted Palpatine even if he didn't reveal himself to Anakin. All the lack of Anakin changes in that scenario is that Sidious would have been able to get the drop on them more easily, but without Anakin, his time would have been short. The 501st alone wouldn't have been able to carry out Operation Nightfall, and without Darth Vader splitting up Yoda and Kenobi, the Jedi may have been able to kill Sidious after the declaration of a new order. There would have been a whole mess for them to deal with afterwards, but Sidious, at least, would have been dead. No matter how the scenarios play out, Sidious would not have had a lasting victory without Darth Vader, something he knew full well. Furthermore, Maul bringing Anakin Skywalker to Mandalore would likely have prevented him from falling to the dark side altogether. Anakin still would have had his vision of Padme's death, but that alone wasn't what turned him into Darth Vader. Two crucial components, Palpatine's telling of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and the Jedi Council being dodgy as hell, would have been missing from the equation. If Anakin wasn't on Coruscant, the Council would not have assigned him to spy on Palpatine, and they would not have refused to grant him the rank of Master. These two things were what shattered Anakin's belief in the Jedi Order, making him vulnerable to Sidious's manipulation. And if Palpatine hadn't told him about Plagueis, Anakin would have no reason to see the Sith as a viable alternative to the Jedi. If Maul's plan had worked, Padme would have given birth before Anakin got back to Coruscant, and while Anakin would have gotten in hot water with the Council for this, it wouldn't have mattered. Sidious would have had much less ammunition to turn Anakin to the dark side with, and not nearly enough time. His choices would have been to be arrested by the Jedi for not stepping down after the death of General Grievous, or to go out with a blaze of glory, neither of which would have worked out well for him. The same scenario would likely play out if just Anakin or Obi-Wan were sent to Mandalore. Maul only needed Anakin, but if Obi-Wan showed up alone, then Anakin surely would have been sent to Utapau to stop General Grievous, which, again, would have taken him out of play for Sidious. In all honesty, this would have been the best case scenario for Maul, as he stood solid chances not only of not being killed, but also of getting a little more revenge on Kenobi, one way or another. But what do you think? Do you have your own theories in this? And do you agree with ours? Let us know in the comment section below. And just before you go guys, if you want to join our wider community, check us out on Patreon for exclusive content and access to our behind the scenes Discord, where you can chat to myself and the whole team. And if you want to listen to and use some of the music we use in our videos, make sure you check out our Relax Shack music channel. And if you just want to join the wider Geetsly's community, check us out on our main Geetsly's Discord and our Geetsly's gaming network. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.